Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Redarc Pro Liberty Trailer Brake Controller here on our 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. The Nissan Pathfinder is a great crossover SUV for the family. It's got nice 3-row seating, so that way you can haul everybody there at once, but because of that, it doesn't really have too much storage space. So it kind of limits what we're able to take with us when we're out on our adventures. So one of the options is to have a roof rack like our neighbor does. Looks like that's a factory one from Nissan. And then the next way is to tow a trailer behind you so you can haul all that gear or pull that camper, so that way when you're out on those adventures with your family, you have somewhere to sleep at night. Now, when it comes to getting all of the components necessary to do that, you're gonna need a trailer hitch, you're gonna need a 7-pole trailer wiring harness, and then also a trailer brake controller. Now, with ours today, this was a platinum trim level, so they already had the factory 7-pole already installed, all ready to go. There's nothing that we had to do with that. The only thing we had to look for was the actual connection to the factory wiring harness for the trailer brake controller up behind our dash. So you will want to definitely make sure that you are verifying exactly what you have, so that way you can get everything that you're gonna need to be able to install a trailer brake controller, because there's gonna be a variety of different ways to do it depending on what you already have in your Nissan. So in our case, with it already having the 7-pole, we don't want to have to try and splice in any wiring, so we want to get a custom fit harness. So unfortunately, we don't have one from Redarc at this time, but with trailer brake controllers, you can use other brands because it is just a 4-wire process there, and they all use the same pattern. So it's going to be black for your power, white for your ground, blue is going to be your brake output coming to the 7-way and then going out to the trailer, and then the red wire is going to be looking for that brake signal from your brake pedal. So in our case today, we were able to use that CURT wiring harness, and we were able to plug right into it, and we just spliced on our universal wiring harness from our Redarc into the CURT one, so that way we could make that connection and then have all of that transfer back here. Now, if you don't have a 7-way and you are having to add one in, then it's going to be a little bit different. You are going to be running a bunch of wires. You're going to have wires that are going to run from the 7-way up to the battery in your engine compartment, and then through the firewall into the cab, so that way you can get that brake signal and then also connect power up to your brake controller. So in this one, this is going to be a super simple, quick, easy install just because it is plug and play, and there's a great spot on the dash for us to mount up our plug. But if you are that person that is having to install the 7-way as well, this is going to be a much longer process for you. Now, if you don't know what a 7-way looks like, you're going to see this socket right here. It's going to have a pretty big lid on it you can pull up, and it's going to have 7 different tabs. So we'll have 6 on the outside and then 1 in the center. And on the front of it, it's explaining exactly what each one of those pins in here is going to do. Now, there's also going to be the trailer brake wiring harness, which is located in the dash. And that is also going to be needed in order to complete this. So you will want to make sure that you can pop out that dash, get back there, make sure that that wire harness is there before you purchase anything. So whether you find out you do have that 7-way and connection point inside of your dash, or you don't, you can definitely still feel free to use our dealer locator to find a shop near you and get it professionally installed if you're just wanting to avoid all the hassle. Now, if you are wanting to do this yourself, then stick around and I'll walk you through the process. All right, now our Nissan has a factory 7-way, which means that there should be a wire harness that's bundled up under our dash here for us to connect to for our brake controller. We want to do it that way because it's going to be a whole lot easier. We'll just have this simple plug-in connector instead of having to run wires and splice and cut into other very, very tiny wires that can end up being more of an issue. So what we're going to want to do is take a trim panel tool. We'll pop out this little side panel here. And realistically, you don't even have to go all the way, because then we can start, once we get these tabs out past this lower plastic piece, we're going to be pulling this straight out. So you can kind of get your hands behind it right at the steering column and then work your way across. There we go. Now there's more holding it up, but we don't really need to pull the whole piece off here. I do want to check though, I believe right here is going to be the best spot for my control knob to sit, just because there's a ton of open space. I will need to verify that with the plastic that's up here still in the dash, so I'll probably pop this back into place and double check under there. But I can see my harness already, so it's this guy right here. We'll peel back some of that tape. Now this guy, and we can just verify that by plugging in our wire harness here. Yep. So we know that is it. I'll undo that for right now. But now we know where to start from. Now this isn't going to come with the kit, so if you are purchasing the Redarc Brake Controller in this fashion, it's going to come just all by itself. You'll need to order a universal wire harness separately, and then also this harness from Kurt, which we're going to cut off the Kurt side of it, and then we're going to splice that right onto our universal wiring harness for our Redarc Brake Controller, because it's only going to be 4 wires. So we'll have black, which is our power, white's our ground, blue is our output towards the 7-way from our brake controller, and then red is for the brake light switch. So anytime that we press on the brake pedal, it's going to send that signal back to activate the lights. Well, it's also going to send a signal to our brake controller to activate. So at this point, like I said, I'm going to pop this back up. I'm going to lay down in here and just kind of double check, make sure I got enough room behind here once this is closed up, so that our brake controller can actually fit in there, because it's going to stick out roughly 2 inches, maybe 3 inches, if we look at our control knob here. So this is going to have to live behind the dash, so it's always important to make sure that you have enough room for that to actually fit. And looks like it sticks out just as much as our push tab. Probably come in a little bit once we actually drill through. So another thing to do is go and look in your manual. It'll tell you how thick the plastic can be for that knob. We may have to trim this out just a bit, because it feels like it's probably closer to about a quarter inch thick instead of closer to like an eighth, like what we're wanting. So I've played around with this a bit and figured it out. We've got a little bit of plastic behind us on our trim panel side, and then I've got a plastic piece up here, so we got to get right in between the two, and this is going to be my spot right here. We're about 2.5 inches away from the edge of our buttons for the little spot that I marked out for my drill hole. So we can grab our drill now and get that cut out. So now I'm going to be using a 3/8 drill bit, and we'll be drilling out the hole for our main unit to go through. Now for the light, we're going to be using an 1/8 inch drill bit. Alright, now we get that drilled out, we can hold up our controller, make sure it's lining up right. It looks like it is, but with how thick the plastic is, I am going to have to trim out the back here. So all the little bracing that they put in there, I'm going to trim all that out. I'm going to be using my multi-tool, a razor blade, and probably a few other tools just to kind of really get that down to the thickness that we need it to be. Alright, it took a bit. I ended up using a grinding bit and just kind of ground out the inside here a bit until I got it down enough to where I could actually get the nut on here. You can see, kind of indented in, going on down there. Once you get it enough to where, essentially what I did was I went until the little light plastic piece was sticking out enough past the dash here, so I knew I was in enough. Then I put on my little backing plate here, slipped on the nut, and I tightened that down. I'm using a 12mm wrench for that. And be careful, it's really easy to strip out the screw, because this little centerpiece right here has the threads on it. If you go too hard on it, you'll strip it right out. But now that we have that on, what do we at here? We're all the way to the left. So that'd be 0. So I want 0 at the top. When we're all the way counterclockwise, that's at the low end of our range. As we turn it clockwise, it's going to be raising it up to the max gain. So at this point, now we need to figure out where we want to mount up our unit. And I've already kind of done that and gotten it prepped, ready to go, so I can show you. Now, right here on this metal bracing, there's a screw. I popped that screw out. I'm going to use that, and I'm going to shoot a self-tapper into that hole I drilled up above it. But the problem is I've got a little bump out right here. So I'm gonna have to stack some washers on our bolts as I shoot it in. So between the framing and our unit, I'll have some washers to kind of give it a little bit more height. And then also we need to make sure that where we're mounting it, there's going to be enough room for our wiring. So I already have it plugged in. I've held it up. I've got plenty of space up above where our unit's getting mounted to actually have that sit. So I'm happy with that, and we can have that reach right down to where we're going to be plugging in our wire harness. So at this point, I just need to get all of our washers and our 2 bolts all set. Then we can shoot them in. I'll probably prep by putting our screw in. So the screw that's there is just a tiny bit bigger than what the opening is here. So I almost kind of cut threads into the plastic here, putting the screw into it. Now I can get those washers on there and not have them fall off on me. And I've already checked how thick it needs to be. It's about 3 washers. Can line it back up. Snug it down. Just be careful when you're doing that too. Remember, this is plastic. There we go. It's real easy to break it if you go too hard. I probably will have to loosen that just a bit more to get the washers for the second one, but while we're getting everything prepped, it's fine to have it a little bit tight. All right, I've got both the top and bottom tight. You can see not really much movement, which is what we're wanting here. And we can pull our harness down to where we can actually work on it. I'm gonna grab some butt connectors as well, because at this point, like I said, we are gonna have to cut off that connector on our Curt wire harness, so that way we can plug it into our Redarc harness, so that way we have a plug and play option to go with our factory wiring. Wire loom and tape here too. We can re-tape that up once we have it all back together. And we'll strip back the casing on each one of our wires. Then we'll take some butt connectors. We're gonna twist those on, crimp them down. Now for the Redarc harness, we're going to be just matching it color for color, so white to white, black to black, red to red, blue to blue. All right, at this point, we can now plug in our connector. All this extra wiring we're just going to bundle up. Usually I just try to find like a piece of framing where it's got an open hole in it that's not being used, and I can zip tie right to that to help hold it up. Now I've got that all tucked up out of the way. Last part here is going to be our connection between our main unit and our control knob. So there's going to be a 90-degree bend in one side, straight on the other. In our case, straight's going to be going into the control knob, and the 90 I'm going to put into the unit. All right, so at this point now, I'm also going to zip tie up all the wiring here. I'm going to leave a little bit of slack just in case I ever have to take the dash back down to get to something else. But right about there is probably enough. Now that everything's hooked up, our next step is going to be just reinstalling our dash here, and then we need to actually go and test out our brake controller with a trailer that actually has brakes. So I'm going to get this all put back together. We'll head over to our selection of trailers for the day, and we'll test it all out. So when we're not hooked up to the trailer, we should see just a small blue flashing light. That blink's going to be pretty slow, but now once we're actually hooked up to the trailer, it's going to be blinking blue and green to tell us that it's in calibration mode. So it's essentially just trying to figure out its orientation, so that way the inertia sensor inside can properly send back that voltage to our trailer brakes in proportion to what we're doing with our brake pedal. So all we have to do is just simply drive around with the trailer hooked up, and this will learn its orientation just by us simply pressing the brakes every so often and getting that full stop in, so that way it can kind of figure out exactly where it's at. So with all that said, let's get in. We're going to drive around and get this calibrated, and we should be good to go. Now usually when I'm testing this, I want to put it right around the middle, so right at that 5, and then we can use that and press in on the manual override to make sure that we are calibrating this. You can see as I'm pressing the brake pedal, we're getting that almost like a purple color. Now if I run my dial down, it'll go back to that blue. And as we increase our gain, that color is going to switch from that blue to a purple to a dark red, or bright red, I should say. You can see there all the way at 10 on our gain. So that's another little indicator to kind of help guide you where you're at in case you can't really read the numbers while you're out on the road driving around and you just need to make a quick adjustment. So like I said before, it's going to be counterclockwise to lower our gain, clockwise if we want to raise our gain up. That's going to do it for our look at and installation of the Redarc TowPro Liberty Trailer Brake Controller here on our 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right trailer brake controller for your Nissan Pathfinder, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out on your journey.